What's up, everybody? It's ImmaLetYouFinish show number 178 here on the Pantheon Podcast Network. Listen, we are a pop culture show that's really based around music. And every now and then, we like to, you guys know our love of certain artists, and we like to talk about music. And, like so some of the...
we're doing an all Ice Spice show today, right?
Right, all Ice Spice. Like some of our partners on the Pantheon Podcast Network, like the About a Song podcast, which if you've never listened to it, it's a really great show. They take each episode is one song, break it down top to bottom, really amazing show. Then we've got a couple of new ones, Bare Naked ABCs, which is an alphabetical Bare Naked Ladies catalog show, which they're going song by song, including all the rare tracks, which is kind of amazing because I've never been the hugest Bare Naked Ladies fan, but I'm like, you know what? Maybe this is a way for me to find out more about Bare Naked Ladies. Glass Houses, Billy Joel, not Amy's favorite Billy Joel, but here's the thing. A Billy Joel show where they're breaking down his entire history, tours, albums, singles. There's a lot there, he's Billy Joel. And Something for Nothing, a Rush fan cast, you know what I mean? So for us, we're doing our version today. We always talk about Pet Shop Boys.
Yes, we do.
We love Pet Shop Boys.
Better songwriters than anybody.
And we've been, Amy and I just, offline, we talk about them. You guys would gag at the amount that we talk about Pet Shop Boys. We just love them. We always find a way to talk about them and their
really
albums.
Interesting, and I was thinking about this because, like you, the two of us have the attention span of like gnats on meth. So I am seriously, obviously... Everyone, if you say Pet Shop Boys, everyone goes West End Girls. Or maybe
I know.
It's a sin. All right. So obviously, I'm a little bit older than you, but obviously that's the first song we heard. That's 1984. So obviously we both heard that around the same time in the clubs, wherever. It was a big song in all the clubs, I'm assuming wherever you live, but especially in New York. And then It's a Sin, Opportunity, certainly. But I'm trying to think because, again, there are very few groups. Okay, let's put it this way. The Rolling Stones obviously grew up loving them, but I don't instinctively run out to hear what the new Stones record is. I don't. Right. I'm like, there's a Stones. I mean, this one I did because there was a lot of press. Roxy, but they haven't made new music in years. I'm trying to think about what was the moment where I suddenly went, I'm looking forward to a Pet Shop Boys album. When is, because they are a consistent recording group. They are not a nostalgia act. It's like people who think the Beasties were only the first album. They have an album dropping in April. And I was really trying to think, when was that moment? Now, granted, I was in the industry, so I got stuff for free, but when was that moment where I went, I need to start listening to the albums? Can you think of like when?
I know what it was for me, actually.
Yeah.
It was What Have I Done to Deserve This?
But the album, did you listen to an album?
That, I'm telling you, it was What Have I Done to Deserve This as a single with Dusty that really made me pay attention to.
Yeah.
I mean, because I loved West End Girls in the first singles, and I thought that album was cool. But it was that song that really brought me to the album. And then I've been into their albums ever since, right? Because I think that people don't give them credit for their actual songwriting.
In this country.
Because I think that, but even overseas, I think if you talk to them, I think people think of them as a dance band and don't pay attention to.
They've had a lot of number one albums. They are,
because of the beats in the songs, right? And people love that. And I think, which is why the album that we're going to talk about.
Well, albums.
Yeah, but I think that people don't give them credit for the actual lyrics and the subjects around what they are saying. Because those albums, if you go back and you listen, they are snapshots in time. They're actually, Neil's lyrics are very personal, so you can tell what is happening in his life. That as a gay man, I also started to connect with their lyrics because they were talking about things that were kind of happening at the time, like Behavior, right? Which is their first Downer album, which is about AIDS and that whole period and loss and our friends dying. And that is a very known thing, right? For a gay man like me who had graduated from high school, coming out. That period was my youth in New York City, right? So I understood a lot of what they were talking about on that album.
I think Behavior is, and that came out in 1990. They still perform when you see them live. Every time I've seen them live, the first time I saw them perform was the tour in support of Behavior, and that
I'm so jealous that you saw.
Well, you should be, because it actually really, I have to say, and I don't say this to be like, oh my God, but it really was a stunning show because it was a full out it was theater. It was set in and that the song that. It was at Radio City Music Hall.
And I believe that was their first tour, wasn't it?
I don't know, but it was. I'd have to think that they did some sort of dates before that, but that was like the first full on coming with, full on production. And when you only have two guys in a group, you do have to kind of give people something to look at. But Behavior has the lead track is Being Boring. And Being Boring is still performed to this day, and it's deceptively serious because the beat is kind of this kind of, jazzy kind of, Latin-y, jazzy kind of thing. But it is, I would venture to say that it is one of the most, it looks at people's lives, starting with the 20s with Zelda Fitzgerald and then working its way up to the 90s, which at that point, and some are dead and some are missing in the 1990s or 1980s.
Their first tour was 1989.
Okay, so
and Behavior comes out in 90, and then
that might have been their tour.
Or you could have seen the performance tour, which was in 1991. Because if they sang anything from Behavior, you probably saw the performance.
It was Behavior.
Tour.
The whole thing was Behavior.
Yeah. So then,
what I was saying about, I think Behavior is the point where people start realizing this is not just a group that puts out a bunch of great singles. This is a group that is putting out albums. And even though Behavior is not a concept record, there are songs that are sort of funny. So Hard is sort of a nice little swipe at taken seriously is a nice little swipe at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. It's actually pretty funny. But the
remixes, and let me just tell you something. The remixes for fucking So Hard, the David Morales Red Zone mix is still just, I love, oh my God, that package is so amazing. Yeah, but go on, sorry.
I was going to say, I think Being Boring is a song.
One of their best songs.
It really is. And I think that in a lot of ways, that's when you start realizing these are serious songwriters because the subject matter is about loss. And I would venture to say there were a lot of songs that came out of the initial days of the AIDS epidemic and people dying. But that song, without saying it, without pinpointing it, talks about loss and talks about longing and talks about that moment when you really can't express your loss publicly because there's so much of it. You're overwhelmed by it. And it's an absolutely gorgeous song. I mean, there's a reason why I don't think it was a single in the way that West End Girl, like a single in the sense that it was a hit. Every time I've seen them, they do that song.
Yes, and they did it when we saw them, and I was happy.
That was a hit for. Yeah, but it's an absolutely stunning song, and it has not aged at all. And that, I think, and we're going to get it, that is the thing that's really extraordinary about it. A lot of groups that do quote-unquote dance music, and of course they're way past that, are very time-stamped. They're very like, that was the sound right now. That was the sound right now. Pet Shop Boys have managed on every single record, whether it's a slower song or a kind of rock song or a kind of straight ahead club song, to sound like the moment they're coming out and timeless. If you listen to Behavior, you put Behavior in front of somebody, or Bilingual, or if you said to them, what year did this come out? There is no way that somebody could pinpoint it. I mean, you know dance music better than me, but there is no way, because it's not train spotting. They never train spot, they never go with, if they go with the hot guy, they're coming up with something different for everybody, So Behavior, I think in some ways, correctly, is almost like their White Album, not the White Album because the Beatles were, but it's the album that suddenly go, oh, this is an album. This is an album group. and it's so if you're gonna do the Dummy's Guide to Pet Shop Boys,
start with Behavior
and October Sympathy, and This Must Be the Place. Oh my God. The break on This Must Be the Place. And again, keep in mind that this is, they have studio musicians, and we'll get into that because Johnny Marr.
Yeah, but this is also the album, that gives the kids, Where the Streets Have No Name, right? Which people love.
Behavior?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Not on my version of it. I don't think Streets Have No Name is on Behavior. I think that's early.
It is the third single from their fourth album. Let's see. The song is
Nope, it's not on the original album. Being Boring, This Must Be the Place. To Face
the third single from their fourth album, Behavior, as a double A-side in the United Kingdom. Both singles were released separately in the United States.
All right, it's not on. All right. We're both correct. It's not on the original album, which came out in 1990. So it's Being Boring, This Must Be the Place, which is gorgeous. To Face the Truth, How Can You Expect to Be Taken Seriously, which is classic kind of Neil, biting, kind of witty. Only the Wind, My October Sympathy, which features a Russian chorus, which is interesting. So Hard, Nervously, The End of the World, and Jealousy. So that's the American. Anyway, if you're going to start anyway, and you should start everywhere, I would say that's kind of like you're good. That's when they shift to me into and they've always had brilliant taste in covers. They've always done the best covers,
and anyways, your guy Johnny Marr played on a couple of tracks on this album.
My God, I never listened to the Smiths when they were big.
But you like Johnny Marr.
Well, Johnny Marr, everybody likes Johnny Marr.
Okay, so then why are you like, my guy, you like Johnny Marr? Every time we talk about Johnny Marr, you like Johnny Marr. It's not a controversial statement.
He's everywhere.
I know more about who Johnny Marr is because you like Johnny Marr. I knew who he was, but I didn't really talk about it. I've talked more about Johnny Marr with you than anyone else.
Well, it's really interesting because I've become familiar with Johnny Marr. I did not listen to a lot of Smiths not because I didn't like them. They just didn't resonate with me because of Johnny Marr is one of those guys. He's a musician's musician. He works with Brian. He works with everybody. So he has a very distinctive guitar sound. Mm-hmm. And the Pet Shop Boys, and it says something about Johnny Marr. It says something about, it's like a Nile Rodgers. It said something about that artist and their Pino Palladino. We just posted something about him. It says something about a quote unquote other, an acclaimed kind of artist when they work with other artists that they can speak. And correct me if I'm wrong on this, and I'm not saying this because, you're a gay guy. I would think for it, it's got to say something that all these kind of artists want to work with a group with the Pet Shop Boys. They acknowledge them as being something seriously, seriously important.
Because I think musicians understand that they're songwriters. You listen to the lyrics, and yes, there is a lot of the sounds that you hear are created by computer, and then they have had on a lot of albums somebody come in and play guitar on top and occasionally piano on top. But these are real songs, right? And as a group that people want to label maybe a dance band, they have real songs. They're not nameless, faceless people. And they also have always created an image around their campaigns. And you could just tell it was always thought out, and their art was always great. These were guys who actually cared about what they were putting out, had something to say, and had a point of view. And I think people who work in the industry respect somebody when they see that you can tell someone who has a clear point of view. And lyrics, you and I talk about this all the time. Lyrics matter. I think Taylor Swift is popular because lyrics matter.
I wouldn't compare. Well, yeah.
I'm talking. It's a concept, Amy. It's not about comparing people.
No,
about lyrics. Why Taylor Swift is popular? You look at every stadium show, and those people are singing every song word for word.
Right.
When we were at the Pet Shop Boys concert, everybody in there was singing every song word for word. Lyrics matter. You know what I mean? They have those type of songs that you just want to sing out loud, especially when they're in front of you. Those lyrics matter because they mean something. And especially some of the later albums that really, like Elysium to me, which is about aging, and Release, which is their other considered downer album, which is clearly about the end of a relationship, the breakup, and the aftermath.
It's a breakup album.
And I think we all can relate to those scenarios. So when you have those kind of really, Neil's a writer. He was an editor and a writer, right? So, those lyrics are often quite poetic, and I know as a gay man, I can relate to a lot of the things and the emotions that he's singing about, because we're kind of in that same age group at this point. So, I think a point of view is important, and that's why a lot of people respect Pet Shop Boys. They've been around for a long time. They have a point of view. They have done it their way. They still continue to do it their way, right? They've not let themselves be molded into something.
Every time they tour, they sell out. Every single time they tour, they sell out. And in England, I mean, they were in when the Olympics were in London, they were included as part. One of the things about it, and I'm glad you brought. Yeah, you're getting a full. It's very artful. You get a full sort of package. I mean, we saw that, and like I said, I've seen them 5 times on. They start out, the two of them, and they always have, Chris is always wearing the hats, and you don't really see him. He's sort of the teller of Penn and Teller. He's very. There's actually a very funny bit. Did you see the Sparks documentary? Did you ever see that?
Mm-mm.
It's really great, but there's a very funny bit where they talk about Sparks' influence of being sort of the first pop group, to have the frenetic or just the lead singer, the focus, and then the guy on the side playing the keyboards. Now, obviously, Sparks has got a completely different type of singer than Neil Tennant. Neil Tennant is not Russell Mayer, and Chris is not Ron Mayer, though there is a deadpan sort of thing. And they talk about that, and they interview Neil Tennant and say, what kind of influence did Sparks have on you? And he goes, yeah, all right, I don't want to talk about that, and walks off. I was like, wow, Neil, okay, that was a little fucking bitchy, but I understand, yeah, no, there's a whole, and when we saw them, what they very often do is that they come out and they do the songs as the two of them, and then they bring a band out. They bring a band out, not a huge band. I mean, a percussionist. They don't have a drummer usually. I don't think they have a drummer, but they have a guitarist and a percussionist. But the first half of the shows is usually, that very much focused on them. And all Neil Tennant is doing is moving from one end of the stage.
It's true. He's not dancing. He's not shimmying. He's not.
He's smiling.
But it's the showman of that energy never feels boring, right? It really doesn't. His arm gestures, his hands, and we're just all like.
He's not the greatest singer of our time,
but
he's not.
But he's
effective. He's effective.
They sound like their records, and that's important.
Like their records.
They sound like their records,
which to me means like their records are live performances captured in the studio,
right?
Because one, and I think we would both agree. I don't want to speak for you, but I think they have so transcended the sort of pejorative of a dance band. I mean, at this point, they are so beyond that. That would be like calling. All right. They're just beyond. That's like saying Dua Lipa is a dance act. You can dance to some of her stuff. It's so beyond that. Pet Shop Boys did start in the clubs. They did start in that kind of 1984 post-punk, post-new wave, electronic, Bronski Beat, Heaven 17, that whole kind of era. They are so beyond that. And I've never, ever understood why no one has done a Pet Shop Boys covers album. Unless those songs don't work with anybody else. I mean, I'm really...
Well, some of the hardest... I think that it's hard to do their type of songs. Certain artists are the only ones who sound good doing their music, right? Like, it would be interesting to hear somebody try to tackle a bunch of their songs, because they've got the ballads are there. The uptunes are there too, but the ballads are absolutely there for someone to try to dig in and do a cover of.
Well, Robbie Williams had a song called "We're the Pet Shop Boys."
He sure did. With what? And weren't they on it?
With them.
Yeah, I was about to say, and they were on
with them. And Bernard Sumner. I mean, I think it had electronica with Neil Tennant. They have worked with there's just a mutual respect. You can feel it. They obviously sell way more in the United Kingdom and Europe. They obviously, and again, let's be fair, England is a very small country. They resonate in a different way. They are like a cult. They're like the biggest cult group in the world. I mean, they sold out the Garden and Barclays. And for those of you who don't live in New York, the Garden and Barclays are a 25-minute subway ride from each other.
Well, the truth of the matter is they still have a very strong base and audience in the U.S. They have a very strong touring economy in the United States where they go and their fans that show up. I will honestly say that, okay, let's talk about a period where they seem to be in flux, right? So we have the Nightlife album. Nightlife comes.
I saw that tour too.
And a lot of things happened during that period that almost made Neil want to throw in the towel. So we've got Nightlife. The album comes. They do a residency in New York City at Roseland, which is basically all fan club shows that almost sell out.
I was going to say, I saw him at Hammerstein.
Then they have this tour where in the middle of it, their promoter goes bankrupt. So they're playing to half-empty arenas. They're really upset. They're bleeding money. The label wants a greatest hits album. And Neil has never said this on record. It's always been, and he's also going through a very big personal turmoil. They're going to start writing a couple of songs for the greatest hits, which ends up becoming a whole album release, which is their other considered downer album. And it is a breakup album, like all the facets of a breakup. I love this album. It was a critical success, and I believe in the UK it returned them to a commercial success. And to me, it is one of the definitive albums that people do not talk about.
No, it's a gorgeous record.
And the B-sides of it all. You know,
well, beyond B-sides. I mean, to call them B-sides is almost an insult because it's like a whole other record. This is not just the demos. I don't want to hear people's demos. There's a reason why that song didn't make the album, okay? Because the demo is usually like, I don't need to hear you strumming on acoustic guitar. So this is the album that Johnny Marr is all over. And I Get Along, holy crap, man. That song is on, first off, it's beautifully produced. I've seen them, they've performed that. That was kind of the single, I guess, because you saw them. No, Home and Dry.
Home and Dry was the single, yeah.
Yeah,
I Get Along was the second single. Home and Dry was single number one. I Get Along was the second single, and then the third single in Europe only was London.
London's a great song, and also, how do you make a sexy song about Jesus? Come on.
What is great about that album to me is it is a very somber for them sort of album. It's like their piano album, and you can hear all of the stages of. There's problems. We're at the end of this relationship. So it's like, where are you? You're not coming home at night.
We need to know that Chris and Neil have never been a couple. We just need to make
never been. And only Neil has come out. Chris's sexuality has never been discussed. He has never come out. We don't know. Chris could have a whole family with 19 kids for all we know.
I would actually like that if that were actually true.
Me too, because what I love about them,
like that. I would actually like, not that there's anything wrong with a gay. I would actually like if Chris is married to his high school sweetheart and lives in the suburbs somewhere and has 5 kids.
What is very fierce about them is, and they remind me of Kylie, is the same thing. These are very public people that if we really think about it, we know very little about. Really, they're very protective and private with their private lives. And I appreciate that. That's old school being a star, right? Like today, I think everybody feels like I have to share everything, but I feel like you don't have to share everything. You don't.
Well, that's also because they don't have personas. They are who they are.
Right.
I mean, Neil Tennant is a middle-aged former pop music critic who is not affecting anything. He's kind of nondescript. I mean, Neil Tennant could walk down the street, and I'm sure nobody. I mean, maybe in London they'd recognize him.
I think Neil, if he walked down the street in New York, I absolutely feel like people would be like, "Oh shit, it's Neil Tennant." Like, you know what I mean?
Their persona comes out for each album, right? When they're wearing the crazy hats. I always love when they're wearing the crazy hats, and he's sitting there, Chris. Yeah, they're. it's an absolutely, and the word that's often used to describe Neil Tennant's lyric is like arch and wry and witty, which is all true, but it kind of, he's not Noel Coward. I mean, there is a I think that's part of it too. There was sort of a sense of removal with a lot of their songs, not because they were observational and they were kind of not tongue in cheek, but there was a kind of West End Girls and Let's Make Lots of Money. I mean, it's kind of, I think Release is where and Being Boring is where it's very, very personal without saying this is my song. Oh, I don't know if you agree. I want to make a case that West End Girls is the first white rap song.
Well, so do they. If you speak to Neil is like, this was our rap song. They are upset that it was not categorized as a rap song. They went on Soul Train. They were like, this is our rap song.
It totally was. It's as much a rap song as Rapture. And that went, so I released, and thanks to Smith Galtney. Hi, Smith. I don't know if you listen to the show, but hi, Smith, who's was a really great critic and a fellow Pet Shop Boys fan. He started talking about so Release comes out 2002. Then there's a whole other expanded version in 2000.
Well, I want to go through, before we even get there, I want to go through some of these songs. And to me, the placement of certain things are really important, right? Because you can hear Home and Dry, I Get Along, Birthday Boy, London, and Email, right? We have this first half where it's clearly this relationship is rocky. We're at the end. And then everything has a certain tempo, and then we get to, because unlike most of their albums, this does not have the big disco stomper banger until we get to that one point in the middle, which feels like it has not that many lyrics, which feels like this is the moment of the breakup, the Samurai in Autumn, right?
Yeah.
That separates that first half and second half of the album, where all of a sudden you have this phonetic twirler, which is almost like a dub. And I'm like, here's the moment. Then we go into Love is a Catastrophe. Here, The Night I Fell in Love, and You Choose. And it's really a brilliant take on the ending of a relationship and all of those feelings that you feel.
To bring it back to Taylor Swift, you don't have to be like, I broke up with this guy and here's my friendship bracelet. Sorry. That's the difference between grown men. You don't have to be overt. In other words, not just.
Well, it's different, but this one, they're coming from a gay, this is written by a gay male in his perspective, and he's an adult when this is happening, versus her who's writing from a girl's perspective. We don't think the same. So it's like how we approach it is going to be different. But what I love is then we go into the further listening part, right? And then you have some of the B-sides to stuff. And I think of like Between Two Islands, which was a B-side to one of the singles. And what I love about that song is you can hear the yearning in the last lines in that are taken from Marvin Gaye's I Want You. He's just repeating, I want you the right way. I want you, and I want you to want me too. I want you the right way. I want you to want me too. He didn't get sued
because he made it a different. You know what song blows my mind on that second half is I Didn't Get Where I Am Today. If you were to drop that, if you were to say, who is this other than his voice, it sounds like some jangle pop, alt rock, Beatle. It sounds like nothing. That it is a rock song with, not capital R rock song. It sounds like nothing they've ever done before. Sexy Northerner.
Let me just tell you something.
It goes right into that.
Love Sexy Northerner. I love that song. That is a great record.
What's crazy, think about this. This could have been, they could have dropped this as a whole album.
Yep.
Not a 10, 5, 6, 7 years after the album.
But it wasn't, because really a bunch of those songs were B-sides to the singles that had come out. Right. So we heard Sexy Northerner. If you like a hardcore fan who buys the albums in every single, a bunch of these you've heard because they were B-sides, they were out there. But when you hear them all together in the further listening series, you're like, right, a bunch of these are great. And, and I love that they always had remixes for them. And if you go back into the concept of the album, I think that is why they're so respected. You realize, oh, you guys were really talking about some shit on this record. And I've always said, I love the Falling in Love album and I love the Fresh Breakup album. Those are usually, especially when you're dealing with an artist who writes, you usually get all of those emotions and they pack a punch.
Well, West End Girls, and there's a cover out now by a group or a couple of months ago that I've never heard from before called Sleaford Mods. We're like a northern, and they've donated all the money to shelter organizations. But if you listen to West End Girls, it's very much, all right, yes, there's a lot of innuendo and kind of like, gay innuendo and prostitution and certainly opportunities. But it's very much a comment on commercialism and Thatcher and the economy. It's very much a comment on people who have no future. Which is what, the English artists at that time in England, the 70s, the Thatcher time was not a good time to be in England. It wasn't until the Britpop era that England was seen as being revived again. I have never heard any artist say anything negative about Pet Shop Boys. And we have all heard other artists say lots of things negative about lots of other groups. And everybody I know who has seen them, who has come in with this preconception of, they're a singles group or West End Girls, they just sit there and go, holy crap. Like, this is, 1984. Think of how many groups have been together since 1984 who have consistently, all right, is every album as brilliant as, no, but they have, it's them, but I can't think of any other groups who have been making consistently good records since 1984.
And whether you love them all or not, they've never made a bad album.
They've never made a bad album. They've made albums that may not be as
and they might not be your taste, but they've never made a bad album. And on that, we're going to take a quick break and see you on the other side.
Hey, Pantheon listeners. Christian Swain here, taking a break from listening to a little Shouted Out Loudcast episode. Love Tom and Zeus talking all things Kiss. Of course, I was listening to them on my new Raycon wireless earbuds. They have quickly become my go-to earbuds because of the comfort. These soft tips are the best I've ever used. And at this price, plus a Pantheon discount, Raycon is really hitting on all marks. Sound quality is great too. I really love having these 3 EQ options because I like more bass in the music, but less in my podcast. 8 hours of playtime for the battery is great as well. Surround sound, noise isolating, and awareness mode are all included. These are great earbuds. Go to buyraycon.com/Pantheon today to get 20% off your Raycom order plus free shipping. That's right. You'll get 20% off and free shipping at buyraycon.com/Pantheon. buyraycon.com/Pantheon. Hey, Pantheon listeners, Christian Swain here. Another day, another podcast I'm working on. This time, it's Famous and Gravy with Amit and Michael. I want to let you know that I loved the Factor Meals package so much that I re-upped for myself, and then I sent a package to my in-laws. Like I was with my first shipment from Factor Meals, the in-laws were as excited to try one of the prepared restaurant quality meals. Well, they got the shipment to Protein Plus meal plan and were very impressed. See, being in their 80s, anything to make the meal prep easy is a plus for them. They heated the oven per instructions and minutes later were enjoying a very delicious, nutritious, and dietitian-approved meal. One big win for me. But what really floored them was the taste. Like I told you, it's surprising how good these meals taste. Restaurant quality indeed. And like my own shipment, it really was everything Factor Meals said it would be for some seniors. No prep, no mess meals. Factor Meals are 100% ready to heat and eat. Take it from me and my in-laws. Head to factormeals.com/Pantheon50 and use the code Pantheon50 to get 50% off. That's factormeals.com/Pantheon50 and use the code Pantheon50 to to get 50% off. Thank you, Factor Meals.
Hey folks, Stefan Shirazi and Renee Richardson here from the Metallica Report.
And we are proud members of the Pantheon Podcast family, where the best of music and podcasts unite.
We've got something pretty cool for you. We're giving away an exclusive Metallica merch package worth over $250.
That's a whole lot of Scary Guys, skulls, M72, and other sought-after Metallica swag. And we've made it easy for you to win. Follow and share the Metallica Report, and you're in the game. Go to pantheonpodcast.com/Metallica, enter your email, and hit that button to be entered to win.
And just like that, you're eligible for our monthly exclusive Metallica merch package.
And guess what, rockers? You can enter every month, so just do it. And while we love our global brothers and sisters, the lawyers won't let us ship outside the U.S.
And we're back.
All right, so I know that you had mentioned bilingual, and bilingual I think is when I've interviewed them twice. Well, I've interviewed Neil twice, and I've interviewed them, and yes, Chris Lowe does talk, okay?
He talks a lot in interviews. That's the thing. People don't think he speaks. It's like, actually, if you see him in interviews, the man speaks.
Yeah. It's, what was I going to say? So bilingual is the record, like I said, I've interviewed him, and they went to Brazil for part of the record. And so you definitely, all right, if there was ever any doubt about their sexuality, which who cares? I'm single, bilingual. I mean, come on. You know, that kind of, you know, and can you forgive her? Is that, no, that's very.
No, that's very. The singles from bilingual are Before, which returns us to the dance floor. Si a Vida, That's the Way Life Is. Single, bilingual, Red Letter Day, and Somewhere.
Right. Great. You know, they go to Brazil. They incorporate Brazilian drumming. It's very much kind of not on all the songs, but it's the first time that, again, I can think of where they've gone outside of their kind of not American, obviously, but outside. They've brought in very obvious other cultural influences, but they don't feel like culture vultures because you can tell that this is, and they haven't done that since. I mean, you're not going to go to Pet Shop Boys for like, you know, though I guess, not Discoteca. Yeah, Discoteca is also good. What's that? What the hell? That's where they say sexolettes. What the hell is that song? Oh my God, Domino Dancing has a kind of, certainly a kind of a Latin kind of beat. And that was a very big song. When you go to see their shows around that time, there is a very big, here's the thing that's really interesting about them. When I saw them at Radio City, the third time I saw them, and it was sort of their audience, it's not just like erudite gay guys. You've got the Chelsea Boys there. You've got Bridge and Tunnel, straight up heterosexual Bridge and Tunnel. And New Yorkers know what that means. Guys from coming in from Staten Island, guys from coming in from Queens. You've got a very diverse audience.
Well, remember, for a lot of years, especially after the mainstream success of pop radio stopped playing their records, they were always marketed to college radio. Now, I don't know what the college radio scene is like now, and because I never even hear anybody.
Exist.
I was about to say, I don't even hear anybody talking about that anymore when I speak to friends who work at labels. But they were always still played on college radio. They were played on the independent stations or like the KCRWs of the world that will still play their records when they have new songs. And so all of those people who were in college and on campuses heard all of these records, right? So that's why
these people coming in from Queens and Staten Island were definitely not in college.
You can't say that. That's absolute no,
that's my
because
opinion.
That's where I grew up, and a lot of those people still went to college. They did. Yeah, but that is why I think a lot of those folks still come and see their shows, and they have such a varied audience because they know the music, right? And it's like, just because you're from Queens and Staten Island doesn't mean you didn't go to a CUNY school or something. All the CUNY schools. what you're saying is slightly is insulting. I'm a Queens boy, so I am going to take up for that.
Girl, and I teach at CUNY school, and I went to CUNY. What I'm saying is, it's a very stereotypical kind of disco crowd. That's what I mean. People go to that's what I mean. When you look at them, it's kind of like the guys with the chains and it's what's interesting about it. What my point was is that it's a clearly very mixed crowd. It's clearly a crowd where straight people don't mind being next to gay people, where black people don't mind being next to Latino people, where women don't mind being. That is what I meant. Okay. That's what I meant. So I'm from the outer boroughs too. I teach, come on, you know what I meant. But that's what I'm saying. It's a very kind of like, you've got the Vinnies and you've got the Sashas and you've got everybody. And how many crowds, look at the crowd we saw at Barclays. That was across, right? That was across the board, I think. You had people who only, right? You were there. That was your first experience with them. And anyway, so that's the kind of time. I think you're right. The people heard this stuff in the clubs, and then their covers. I think you made a good point about Dusty. Their covers opened them up to a whole, because suddenly you're like, wait a minute, I like you too. I think their version of Streets Have No Name is better than
kinda, sorta.
Not that it's a bad song, it's a great song, but you know what?
I like it better than the YouTube.
I like it better because, and I think because you take the persona out of this, you take the personality. So no longer you're listening to the song. You don't have to. It's like, all right, Elvis, whatever. When you hear them do, oh God, what's the Elvis song? Always on My Mind. You're like, oh, okay, Now, What Have I Done to Deserve This is their song, right?
It's their
That's
song.
not a cover.
Mm-hmm. It's their song.
Now, did that come before KLF worked with Tammy Wynette, or is it around the same time?
That came.
All right. So there you go.
Listen, and then it completely revitalized Dusty's career.
As she should.
Then they like, she hadn't had a hit in the UK in decades.
Right.
But she was living in America. She wasn't even living over there. She was living in America. Right. Came back, got her a new record deal. They produced her comeback album, Reputation, which I love. And then
Liza, right?
Then there is the gay. I don't even know what to call it.
No,
it is like.
Let's put it this way: if this record was being released now, it would be banned. It would be banned in Florida and Alabama. Okay, it is the gayest record in the best sense.
There's the birth of baby Jesus, then Liza Minnelli's results for the gays, and so many of my friends. We have if you're a quirky gay, it is like I still play that album.
It's your Kashmir. It's your classic rock.
It's so many things.
And the thing is that it's so. Come on, you're tapping into two of the biggest gay icons, Dusty and Liza.
And
Jesus Christ! All they need is to do an album of Barbra Streisand.
One pop album, because Liza's not made a pop. So you make a pop album with the Pet Shop Boys, and the first single is a cover of Sondheim's "Losing My Mind."
Boom. All right, hold on. Check. Check. Where
the album's a huge hit in the UK. It's a hit it's not a big hit in the US, except for in the gay world. It's, all the gays love it.
Right.
But it is so Liza at her Liza-ist. She's got a pop Liza haircut. You know what I mean? It's the don't fucking drop bombs. Don't drop bombs. Her cover of Yvonne Elliman's Love Pains, or her ballad version of Rent. It's
but here's the thing that's really smart about them. Mm-hmm. And I think why artists, like we were saying, it's never viewed as gimmicky. There's a lot of artists when they work with obviously it's Liza. She's not a pop artist. Okay. Obviously, well, Dusty Springfield was very much a pop artist, but it's not viewed as like, let's take this old broad and stick her in the studio and put a song behind her.
Right.
You can tell Liza Minnelli can do whatever the hell she wants to do. The fact that she saw something in them and her producers felt comfortable enough putting her in the room with them says a lot. This is not, Diana Ross kicking and screaming with Chic. Sorry. I mean, it's an amazing record, but this is something where it's respect. They have respect for vocalists. They have respect for legends, and they have respect for songcraft. And who's more songcraft than a Broadway singer? A show tunes, than Liza, right? And Dusty, who had better songs than Dusty freaking Springfield? I mean, come on. So I think that's very much a part of, and Robbie Williams is a great song, or whatever part of the songwriting he does. He's a pop artist. He's an entertainer. He's in on the joke. Pet Shop Boys are always very serious and in on the joke at the same time, which I got to say that's something American artists don't know how to do. They don't know how to be in on the joke.
Well, because they're all depressed. All of the pop stars. I'm like, everybody's 20 and singing about this. No,
but in general, they don't know.
Because they all feel depressed. It's like you look at all of the records. It's like, you guys are young. When's the part where you guys are still having fun? You should still be having fun. Well, how could they have fun?
They were raised during a pandemic. But I'm talking about in general. Americans don't do self-deprecating very well. We've never been a culture of self-deprecating. I mean, unless you're Jewish, we really don't do self-deprecating because Jews have filled with self-loathing. No, seriously. I mean, and that's where we get into we're kind of kidding around, but the Pet Shop was arch and witty. And there's Neil Tennant is not a belter. He's not, I mean, they just did a cover of All the Young Dudes. Totally. I mean, if that's one of the greats, make it their own. How do you make a Bowie song? A Mott the Hoople made a Bowie song their own, and then they make a Mott the Hoople song their own by changing the lyric. All he does is change one word in the lyric, right? Dudette. I'm a dudette. Boom. I just think that they're extra. All right, so we're on Bilingual, great record. We talked about Release. You want to talk a little bit about Very? All their albums have one title. No,
you want to
know
why? Because I feel like Very, people know Very, right? People really know Very. You know what I want to talk about? Elysium.
Can I think say one word about Very? Mm-hmm. Can I just? I love the song "All Over the World." I just absolutely.
It's a gorgeous song.
And it's poppy, and it's a more uplifting kind of. I just really do love that song. There's something very hopeful, and I also do like that all their song titles are in lowercase.
Actually, well, All Over the World is on Yes.
Oh yes, I'm sorry. You're right.
It's on Yes. Now Yes is. Okay, yeah, let's go to Yes.
Yeah. Well, Very also has Can You Forgive Her, which is talk about. Yeah.
Ooh. But Yes, Very is a huge album for them, right? Yes is one of their best known albums.
I can't read my own handwriting.
But I'm going to say Yes, which has Love, Etc. I love that song. Then your song All Over the World, and Did You See Me Coming, which is
Beautiful People.
All of the things.
Boom. They're so good. They're such a good group. Maybe this is speaking to my horrible attention span. That by the fifth song, you're like, I'm completely satiated. I'm good.
And I would tell people who've never listened to Yes, which came out in 2009, it's amazing. And go into further listening series that came out in 2017. It is really just the B-sides again. I Cry for Us. It Doesn't Often Snow at Christmas. New version.
The best. Okay, Okay, you heard it on this show. My dying wish is for Bill Adler to put that freaking song on Jolly because it's the best Christmas. No, what it is. It's funny. I've read some reviews of Yes, and that's the one record they got some negative reviews about.
Yeah.
Because it's too commercial.
Well, that and Elysium. I think some people did not get Elysium. They did not get that record. But to me, Leaving is one of their best songs. Leaving, I played that song so much. That is just fucking top notch to me. Winner is top notch to me. A face like that, top notch. Give it a go. Just
even their titles are just I don't know why everything's lowercase.
Well, and you know, with Elysium, they recorded the album in Los Angeles, and it was close to what's the park called? Something Park.
Park.
Well, something like Elysium Park, Elysius Park, some shit like that. It was close to a fucking park.
I know Elysian Field in New Orleans. I don't know that. Love. All right. You want to talk? All right. I think Vocal is one of the best dance songs ever written.
Yeah. And that was, and it's interesting because that really is on the Further Listening series. So they recorded their first versions of Vocal, which clearly does not fit the whole vibe of Elysium, which is another one of their...
No, it's on Electric.
No, I'm telling you, if you go into the Further Listening series of Elysium, the first version of Vocal, it was recorded during those sessions, right?
Okay.
So it's clear that doesn't really go, like the demo of it, and She Pop does not go with the whole vibe of what Elysium was. Then we go into Electric, which is that's when we starting with our Stuart Price moment. And that whole album really is seen as after the releases in the Elysiums, we go Electric, which is kind of seen as a return to form. You know, when people like to say, it's the return to form. It's a full-on Pet Shop Boys dance electronic masterpiece of, we're just going to give you beat after beat after beat.
I saw that tour too. I saw that tour. And I want to tell you, the audience, it was the fist pumping boys in the tank tops in the middle of winter. Dancing. I told you the story about Rufus Wainwright. I lost all respect for Rufus Wainwright because in the middle of the show, it was at the Beacon, and those of you who've been to the Beacon, it's a beautiful old theater in New York, and you have, if you want to leave, you can go get a cocktail and come back. He left in the middle of the show, and I was at the show with Michael Gonzalez, and I just went, who the hell leaves in the middle of a Pet Shop Boys show to get a cocktail? Really, Rufus Wainwright? You can't hold out for an hour and a half? And he comes back with his cocktail, and I was seated right behind him, and I was watching to see if he could dance. Mm-hmm. He's not a very good dancer.
The judgments.
He's not a very good dancer. But it was just funny because the whole audience, especially during Vocal, they were on their feet and they were dancing and stuff like that, but the whole audience just went like that. It's a very kind of ravey song in a way too, right? Because that is their return to the you want to return to the dance floor? Here's a full throttled return to the dance floor, no filler. I mean, Love is a Bourgeois Construct. What a hilarious title too, right?
It's like
bullshit. What does that even mean? Bullshit.
Let me just tell you something. That shit.
What is it? What does that mean?
Shit makes me grind and bump and dance. And honey, there's no you, honey. Maybe you should do a little more grinding and dancing and freeing and being free. That song is great.
I dance to that album all the time. Mm-hmm. No, it's a great album, and it is this. It's sort of like we've been building, and then it's like boom, absolute boom, And again, really interesting visual show. They had these screens up that were, I can't describe it because I'm not I don't know much about set design or anything like that. But again, two guys on stage, and they were the screens were kind of imitating what they were. I don't know. It was an absolutely great show. And what I thought was really interesting, and then, we'll get into like the last two, I guess, the other albums that you want to talk about. But what I thought was really interesting about the Barclays show is that's the first time I've seen him in a full out stadium. Mm. I've always seen him in what'd I say? Stadium arena. Mm-hmm. Big place. Mm-hmm. That's what I mean. How big is the Beacon? 2,000 seats?
No, the Beacon is 5,000.
Oh, is it that big? Okay.
I believe it's almost, no, Radio City is like 5,000. The Beacon is probably between 3,000 and 4,000. It's a big room.
But It's not huge. Radio City, we just said what that is. Hammerstein was not a huge venue. I mean, big, but not a stadium, not an arena. So that, to me, again, that they could translate two guys on a stage, one guy standing there with a muffaluffa hat. All he had on stage was a lamppost. Remember that? And he would just walk over to the lamppost. Oh no, they're just.
And then they did have dancers, and you're right. Then dancers come out, but even with the dancers, it wasn't 40 of them. But the choreography, the stage setup is always great. They're listen, top notch live performance. What was also fierce is how they usually, like for Electric, I'm so mad. For Electric, they did a limited edition vinyl box set that was in these lucite color cases that are there was a limited number of them, sold out immediately, super hard to find. But what I love for them, even with the new album coming, they announced a week full of shows at the Royal Opera House in London. They're sold out immediately. You know what I mean? It's like,
how come he hasn't been knighted yet? I'm really surprised. Seriously, I'm not saying that to be like. To me, they are an absolute British treasure. They really, truly are. I mean, they are an absolute. They epitomize everything that's good about British music.
Yeah. Listen, I think for the consistency and the amount of years they've been around and the fact that they're still making top-notch music, I'm excited for the new album coming. Like, the last album, Hotspot, was great. The album before that, Super, was great. The Pop Kids was a great single, you know?
Now, Hotspot, they couldn't tour on because of COVID, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So they don't really tour every record, but they do, because I have to imagine it's an expensive tour.
But they constantly stay doing shows. They're always on. Right. They haven't been here a lot, even though they do come, but they put on music. They stay doing shows literally globally. They're in South America. They're in Asia. They're everywhere, all over the continent of Europe and in the UK. They do so many shows. Like, I feel like they've been, since the pandemic started back, since everything is open back up, they've stayed on the road. They've announced more dates, you know?
And a concert film. So concert film. They had a greatest hits package and they had a new record. How many groups can put out a nostalgia and present at the same time? Now, the tour we saw was sort of greatest hits-ish.
Well, it was them with New Order, and they did a cut down version of the Dreamland Greatest Hits tour that they're still on overseas. Right. So what we got was, because their show was about an hour and a half. It was a little, each one was like an hour and a half ish. So we got it's like their show was probably about 30 minutes longer from what I've seen, because we got a lot of the songs that were in there. Like, I will say, the longer show got single bilingual, which would have made me faint. You would have been carrying me out of Barclays, because when they sang, I will say it, and I know I say it a million times on this show, when they sang my song, which is "I Don't Know What You Want, But I Can't Give It Anymore,"
a gay coma.
That is my fucking song. I don't know why I love that song so much.
No, I don't know. I don't either, but it's great.
Love that song.
I think that when we came in, didn't we turn around after I
and it was like, listen,
I'm standing up for the entire show.
I'm just giving you a heads up. I'm going to let you know.
I'm letting you know.
There's gayness happening in front of you. So
and gay adjacent, it's like we stood up and we had not such great seats. I mean, they were free, but and I pulled the trick I've learned where you say, I have vertigo and I get really dizzy, and they go, yeah, we have extra tickets for people who are lying through their teeth like you. And we went, and I think we both turned around and said, these very nice people behind us, they will be singing along at loud volumes, and there will be dancing. So if you're prepared, if you're thinking you're going to have a listening experience,
if you're looking for a listening experience, sweetie, we're really sorry. If you're looking for Jungle Boogie, look no further, because I'm about to give you everything you need.
And no disrespect to New Order, but everybody I know who has seen that tour and they were New Order fans said flat it was their show.
And New Order was great. I'd never seen them. I was really impressed. Neither. I was impressed with what they were serving. Well,
the difference is that he's just not a great vocalist, and everybody will say that. But great songs. But it was Pet Shop Boys. It was Pet Shop Boys to lose, and it speaks again about their importance that you have a group. I mean, New Order could sell out tours if they want to, that they were willing. It was a total co-bill. It was a total, there was
where they flip-flopped on each night. They flip-flopped on who opened each night. It was great.
No, it was great. And that speaks again to, you know who I would love to see them work with? I know you're not a fan the way I'm a fan. I don't know why, but I would have loved to see them work with Noel Gallagher. They seem like, I know you don't get them. Or no, I shouldn't say you don't get them, but they don't resonate. They don't mean as much to you as they do to me. But,
no.
Yeah, but I would have loved to seen them just because he's also very British. Just a very British kind of, I wonder, and vocally, who would you like to see them work with vocally? So they don't need anybody, but
vocally,
Shara Nelson.
That could be really amazing. Listen, I will say this as we, start to wrap up this show. I'm more excited for Nonetheless, their album that comes out in April. I just want to hear what they're giving. It comes out April 26th.
That's my sister's birthday.
And Loneliness, the first single to me is
really good.
Quintessential Pet Shop Boy.
Can you talk about their videos just a little bit? Sorry.
I love this video. The new video for Loneliness.
Loneliness. Their videos.
It's so gay-tastic. It's just
everything is so gay-tastic. It's like, first off, it's the kind of gay-tastic that you get from watching like those Merchant Ivory movies where it's like they're set in boarding schools.
Right.
And no one's actually talking about anybody being gay, but it's like, there's a lot of really good-looking boys.
But then it's like when you really look, it's like there's lots of perversion. It's like it's pretty, and then it's like shoving heads down in crotches.
And then there's always like a girl. If there is a woman in it, like if there is a woman in it, she's sort of like off to the side. I don't know why. Domino dancing. There is a woman in it, but she's clearly going to get dumped because he's clearly looking at the boy. It's very Bruce Weber, right? It's got that
who's worked with them,
Yeah, very Bruce Weber, very Matthew Ralston in a way where it's like, but it's just so funny because they're just like, I mean, their videos come with parental advisory and nothing's really happening, but it's just like, I mean, all right, FYI, this is all a shameless plug and begging for them to come on the show. They did Rock's Back Pages, which is another one of our favorite shows on Pantheon Podcast. Barney and Mark said that Neil Tennant, God of Men, I believe took the train or the bus to their offices. I know where their office is, and just was like a hum-de-dum-dum-dum and came in.
Love it.
So I love that. And he's the only pop music critic I can ever think of who's had a career as a pop star. I mean, can you think of anybody else?
Well, you were in a band.
Well, before I started writing about music, and I was in a band for 5 minutes. I did 2 gigs before I was kicked out. For not being decadent enough and having too many hippie friends.
Well, I think on that's the perfect way to end this show. What it is.
Pet Shop Boy. Listen, guys, if we've done nothing else for you, and maybe we haven't, or maybe we have. No, seriously, we're joking around about this, but they're not huge, but they're so important, and there is something, as we
they actually are huge. I would say that they're huge. They're a huge band. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They're a huge band because most people who've been around since the 80s, that many decades, the fame changes as far as putting out a record and automatically being played on the radio. But their records are still released here in America. You have some people who, after a while, their success stays in Europe. They don't even really release the records in America.
Right.
But America is always still part of their plan. They always still tour here. They have a solid base of fans that have grown with them. And I love that for them because having a career that long, if you can still sell tickets to people, you know what I mean? And go out there and you have people who want to hear what you're doing and are excited for new music. The thing about their fans is we are excited for new music, just like hearing your music. Sometimes you go see certain people and you're like, I don't care about your new album. I want to hear all the old stuff.
Yeah,
You know?
I mean, I've seen U2 a bunch of times. They're great. I could care less what a new U2 record sounds like. I really could.
Right.
Yeah, I mean,
But
they're a great band.
But we're genuinely excited for a new Pet Shop Boys record.
Because we know, as we've said, we know it's going to be them, but not the same.
Absolutely.
It's never going to be the same record. It's going to be very much them, and like, just to bring it around and I'll let you go, like our friend Nas, same one producer albums. Consistency of sound.
I am the firm believer in a one producer album.
Short and focused.
That's what we want. There is a continuity and a consistency you get when you have one producer. I wish we would get more artists to kind of go back to that system of a one producer album, because it really does, like, anyway, we could go on about that 20 million years. Well, you know what it is, people.
Sorry.
You know what it is.
You don't want to hear that. Yeah.
Right. Listen to us. Thank you for listening to us every week on the Pantheon Podcast Network, where you'll find us. You'll find a lot of shows, including the amazing ones we talked about at the beginning of this episode. And leave a comment. We love that you talk to us on our Facebook page. I'm going to let you finish, all one word. Pass it on. Tell a friend. Tell more friends about the Pantheon Podcast Network, the #1 music podcast network.
I know. Look at us.
On the planet. The whole planet, people.
The whole damn
The
planet.
whole thing.
Maybe the universe.
From the rooter to the tutor, honey. Anyway, we will see you next week. We love you, kids. Toodles.
Hey, this is Liberty DeVito.
This is Mike Del Giudice.
This is Michael Cavanaugh from Broadway's Moving Out.
This is John Jackson, director of the Billy Joel Archive.
This is Russell Javers.
This is Richie Cannata, and you're listening to Glass Houses, a Billy Joel podcast. It's awesome.
I'm Michael Grosvenor.
And I'm Jack Fernino.
We're lifelong Billy Joel fans who launched a podcast in 2020 celebrating the music we love.
Whether you're looking for the greatest hits or the B-sides and rarities, you'll find it all here. And if you've ever wondered what happens behind the scenes of a concert or recording session, we've got you covered.
Join us as we explore albums, tours, band members, the latest news, and more. You'll also get a unique glimpse into the music industry straight from the musicians and other professionals who help make it all happen.
Tune into Glass Houses, a Billy Joel podcast at glasshouses.pod.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
Glass Houses, a Billy Joel podcast is a proud member of the Pantheon Podcasts Network.